Welcome to Lead Different, the podcast that redefines leadership and challenges the status quo. Hosted by Daniel Dominguez, founder and CEO of Why Not Leadership. This show is your compass to becoming a better leader through the power of self-awareness. Good leaders foster teams that are engaged, empowered, and energized. Join us on this transformative journey as we equip you with the tools and insights to lead different. Get ready to challenge the ordinary and embrace self-aware leadership. This is Lead Different.
Subscribe now. Discover a new era of leadership. Lead different because great leaders change the world.
Hello, Denise Harmon. How are you?
I am great, Dan. Thank you. How are you?
I am so good. I'm so glad to have you on the Lead Different podcast. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, it's been fun to reconnect with you and hear about all the things you've been doing. We reconnected. We connected. It's been a couple of years since you became a Y certified coach, and that was the mechanism through which we met. But you've done so much since then that when we talked the other day, I just knew I needed to have you on the podcast. So thank you for accepting that invitation.
Well, thank you. It's definitely been a whirlwind since we first met, and I met you in person at the Why Institute, and I love the Why, and I loved learning my Why. So that was a real defining moment for me.
Yeah, so we looked, you have a very unique Y operating system. And and just so you know, Denise, a lot of the people who watch this podcast are fellow coaches. So some of the people you met at the YCon are going to be listening, and they're going to be wondering, okay, well, the first thing I always like to do is let's share your Y operating system with everybody. So this is one of the fun ones, guys. Denise's, my gosh, your why is better way.
Mm-hmm.
Your how is challenge the status quo, and your what is trust.
Yes.
So kind of, what I know about people with your combination of why is you're an innovator. You're somebody who likes to do things different and better, which is a great combination. I happen to have challenge in my why, and I always tell people who have the why of better way that I'm kind of jealous because I tend to do things different just to be different, just to see what happens. When you have the why of better way, you do things different only if they're better. So you're an innovator who makes things better, which is really great. And then you have a what of trust, which I think it's a great combination to have because challenge and better way tend to be very in your face. Let's do something different. Let's do something better. But when you can add trust, so you're someone who likes to create relationships based on trust, it kind of softens the hard edges that come with finding better ways and challenging the status quo. Has that been your experience for you?
It has been my experience, and I am always looking for a better way to do things for my clients. I love thinking outside the box. And I remember years ago, I was talking with a colleague and I said, why are we doing it like this? And she said to me, well, it's just the way we've always done it. And I said, well, we're never going to say that again because we're always going to look for better ways to do things. Let's challenge the status quo. And it gives me such fulfillment to work with my clients and be able to bring them trusted solutions. They know when I come to the table that I do what I say, the things I say to them, they can trust and count on. And I think that's important today in business environments when business culture is so important.
One of the things I definitely want to talk about is your evolution, just even from, did we meet a year ago? Or was it 2 years ago at the Y?
I think it was in 2022.
So it was in 2022. Here we are almost 3 years later, Denise. And, at that time you were just kind of feeling out what you were going to do. But, as we can see, when we look at that banner, you're all about mastering the art of hiring for culture. And when we had our conversation just some time ago, I guess a few weeks ago, I was so enamored by the thought, okay, so what do you mean by hiring for culture? And then when you explained that to me, I knew it was a topic that our audience had to hear about. But Take us through, so it's September of 2022 and it's now April of 2025. What's been going on over the last 3 years? How has Denise Harmon improved and become a better leader and a better coach in those 3 years?
Well, I think it's really looking for identifying the pain points of my clients and then bringing trusted solutions to help them to free up their day, to help them find more time and space in their operations so they can really focus on leading their organizations and focusing on the things that are right in front of them, and then helping them build a really strong culture that thrives by helping with their hiring processes, or even just consulting them. Sometimes people don't want me to do the hiring for them, but they want to collaborate on, what do you think about what we're doing, or why is our turnover higher than what we would like it to be? And so I love working with leaders who bring a collaborative approach to the table. And I think over the last 3 years, I've really gotten in my groove. I mean, we always have space to improve, but I've gotten in my groove of working with business leaders who want to collaborate and they want their cultures to be healthy and thriving. And it is so much fun to work with those types of business leaders. And culture, I feel like in today's world that we live in, culture is everything.
Right.
And I visualize it like this, Dan. It's like a pipe, actually a vertical pipe. And what you put in the top of the pipe, which comes from leadership at companies,
Right.
that's what flows out the bottom. And what comes out the bottom is the culture that impacts the workforce.
Absolutely.
So having strong conversations with leadership about what their culture is, identifying their culture. And I don't mean that by having stuffy mission statements or vision boards. I mean, like
Right.
really getting real and evaluating, what do your employees say the culture is here? Because a leader can say what they think their culture is or what they want it to be. They can define it, but it's really the employees who create and define the culture. And that's a result from the leadership style at the top. So those are all conversations we have. And over the last 3 years, it's just been evolving as I've worked with different leaders, different leadership styles, different employees. And the approach that I take with each company is custom, but there are some common threads that run through that to help them hire strong, not just to hire for skill set,
Right.
but to hire for skill set and culture, which is a real win-win.
You said so much that I think this would be a great time to give the audience a little bit of a background on Denise. But thank you for sharing. And there's a couple of things I wrote down that I want to ask you some questions on.
Okay.
But for sure, let's introduce you. So today's guest, Denise, who you're seeing on your screen, is someone who's reshaping how businesses think about hiring, leadership, and team culture. She is the founder of Harmon Recruiting and Consulting, where she helps companies go beyond filling seats. She helps them build teams that fit, thrive, and lead with purpose. She has nearly 30 years of experience walking alongside business owners and executives. She brings a rare mix of strategic insight, heartfelt leadership, and a deep commitment to people. Her specialty, recruiting for culture, streamlining onboarding, and tackling those stuck spots in business that need fresh perspective and forward motion. I think what I love this about your introduction. What sets Denise apart is her belief that leadership isn't about titles, it's about relationships, transformation, and showing up with authenticity. She's a trusted voice for leaders who want to do more than just manage. They want to lead well, lead differently, and lead together. So, of course, if you want to work with leaders who want to lead well, lead differently, and lead together, you've got to get on the Lead Different podcast, Denise.
Well, I'm tickled to be here. So thank you for having me. This is a lot of fun. And it's
I'm
a
so
topic I'm passionate about. So
and I can tell and I can see that in you. And for those of you that don't know Denise, I talked to Denise 3 years ago, and while, she's still bubbly and friendly, there's a confidence about you that I see. And I think it comes from you've done this work now and you've made a difference and you've impacted people in a positive way. Would you agree?
I would agree. And, it's one thing to work. It's another thing to love what you're doing and to be so fulfilled by it. And I am. And I feel really honored whenever business leaders invite me into the thing that is like, it's all their businesses are their babies. And so
Mhm.
to be trusted and brought in to their environments and be able to speak life in those areas, and then identify, here's some things that you may think are going well, but may not be going as well as you think. And here's some ideas on how to make the culture better, because when the culture is strong and healthy, it attracts strong, vibrant, healthy, contributing, longer tenured employees. And that's important. That helps the bottom line ultimately. So
Absolutely. Well, tell me about this though. This is something, and audience, forgive me if you're out there and you're doing this already, but Denise is the first person that I've seen who is focused on hiring for culture. Now, we can talk about that, and you mentioned what's important in creating culture. You talked about the pipeline and how leaders create culture, and I tend to agree with you. I think culture is not what you put on the wall. It's what you do every day, right? As a
absolutely.
leader, the decisions you make, the way you talk to people, the way the emails that you send, the communications that you send out, all of that builds your culture. So when you say that executives bring you in to hire for them so that you're hiring for culture, what does it mean to hire for culture?
Well, it means to look for men and women who not only have the skill set that's needed for the position they're hiring for, but also has the personality and fits with the current employees and what they have going on there. And it means that, there are cultures that have a lot of trust. And when we say it comes from the top, we've all been at some point in our careers, and I'll just use an example to kind of demonstrate and define this, where we've been in boardrooms, we've been in executive meetings, and there isn't really an openness or a trust factor where everyone at the table feels really free to throw ideas on the wall, which is a collaborative process. And it is very life-giving to organizations because the very best ideas come out that way. And there are some leaders who they want to be the one in charge all the time. This is just a little contrast scenario. And so they may ask questions and want answers back from their team, but they really only want to hear what they want to hear. They don't want to hear. And so those are fear-driven and fear-based environments. And those types of environments create toxic cultures. On the other hand, when you have those kind of engaging conversations or meetings where there's trust, there's freedom to speak, there's freedom to be wrong with ideas, and freedom to be right. Those kind of cultures bring everyone to the table where everyone feels valued, they feel appreciated. That doesn't mean they're always right, but they're respected. And those are healthy cultures. And so I love working with companies who have those types of healthy cultures. And when I am brought in to talk about or to discover what's not the best here, let's identify it. Let's see what are strategies we can put in place to fix and make better our culture. Those are companies that end up thriving when they enhance their culture. Because today, employees, people who are looking for jobs or ready for a change, they want to be a part of environments where they
Right.
can love going to work and enjoy going to work and not fear what's going to happen that day at work, or who's going to blow up. And so having a healthy culture attracts the best employees, because employees today are looking for that.
Right.
The first thing that I'll ask when I'm just, when we're just having let's get to the table and have a conversation about, what are you hiring? What's the position? What is your culture? What do you want your culture to be?
Right.
is I ask, do you have an employment value proposition that you use when you're hiring? And
Mm,
more times than not, companies do not have that. They don't know what it is. And
right.
so if they want me to help them hire, I feel like that is the first step. And it's a very important step because it gives me a chance to talk to other leaders, other key players um, in their organization to see what they really think and feel about the culture of the company. And I love what comes to the top. It is always so interesting and affirming. And then I write that all up for them. So when I'm trying to attract candidates for them,
Right.
I'm attracting people who want to be a part of something that's growing and positive and goal oriented. So,
Well, you talked a lot about so hiring for culture. I mean, how do you figure out what the culture is? Because I can imagine there's a couple of things that I'm thinking about here, Denise. Number one is, how do you figure out the culture? Because I can imagine, just like when we're looking for work, right? Go back to a time when we were applying for jobs, whether in corporate or even our first jobs, people will say anything to get a job, right? Oh, yes, I love, wearing colorful rainbow attire and
yeah,
pushing down on the lemonade machine, right? We'll say what we need to say, what we think we need to say to get the job. I have a feeling leaders will probably often say what they think Denise wants to hear in terms of culture. So, how do you get to the true culture, number one? And then how do you make sure that the people that you're bringing on, what I'm assuming is companies hire you and they say, hey, this is our culture, this
mhm,
is who we want to bring on, and then your job is to find people that fit that culture, right?
right. So are you asking your question is
So how,
how.
how do you figure out, how do you what systems or what processes do you take people through in order to figure out their culture? Is it a questionnaire? Is it something that you've developed? Or how is it that you get to define that company's culture?
Well, I have a series of questions that I ask, and it depends on the industry. It depends on what kind of position they're hiring for, although it mostly depends on the industry. But I will obviously meet first with the leadership team, the owner, the CEO, or whoever is the person bringing me in, and then I ask them, how do you think employees feel about working here? I ask them a series of questions of what do you do to make this place a great place to work? And then I tell them I want to take time to meet with the key players, and then I ask them because they know their company, they know who their key players are. You tell me who would be good people for me to meet with. And I want to meet with not just the people who might say the best things. I want to meet with everyone who is in a position to give me some feedback. And I want to honor their time. I don't drag this out, but then I try to meet and sometimes it'll be one-on-one, sometimes it'll be me and three other people, but I will meet with those key players and I have a series of questions that I'll go through and I'll ask, and I do a lot of listening and watching, and sometimes I'll go off of script of what I have to ask depending on what they say, and I'll say, well, tell me more. And I just listen and learn because we learn so much about people when they start telling us the stories of how they feel about things or situations.
Right.
And by the time you have several conversations, I mean, matter of fact, I was working with a company recently, and I met with 11 different people in their leadership team. And by the time I had met with all of them, I had a pretty good idea of where they have some challenges in bringing on new people and where they have some real strengths. And then there's oftentimes there's some suggestions that come out of all of those meetings, like, there are employees who would really love this if the company would do this, a weekend picnic twice a year, or just all different kinds of ideas come up. But you hear what's important to the employees and you hear what they think is going really well. You hear what challenges may exist. And that's all really great information for business owners and for their leadership team.
So those are that's a skill, and that's a rare skill, Denise. a lot of consultants, a lot of leadership experts ask questions, and just like you were talking about earlier, with leaders, sometimes they know the outcome they want when they ask a question. I think one of the things you're talking about is you ask the question and then you really take the time to listen to the answer and get to that next level. What is it that people want? Do you I'm trying to imagine the process. So do you gather all that information and then you prepare a debrief for the leadership team, and what does that look like?
I
Because
do.
I can imagine you have found some things that maybe they don't want to hear, and then there's probably sometimes when you really hear some great things and the leaders are pleasantly surprised. How does that? How tell us? Maybe share an example of a time when, or maybe not even an example, but just share how what it's like when the feedback is good and what it's like when the feedback is not so good.
Well, I have to say, a lot of times leadership in companies, they're the ones who sign the checks, they have the authority. And so sometimes people are hesitant to go and say to them, hey, I don't feel good about this, or hey, this is going on and this isn't the best thing. And one of the things I feel like that I have been gifted with is stepping into really hard places and saying hard things to CEOs, to leaders, things that most people wouldn't want to say to them or wouldn't want to be in the position to say to them. And
Right.
I don't mind saying them because they need to hear them. And oftentimes, more times than not, they come back and they respect me for saying what they really need to hear that other people won't say to them.
Mhm.
And no matter, you know, I just think those are important conversations to have. And
Right.
the hard conversations, the challenging conversations are things that oftentimes businessmen and women at the leadership level, people don't feel confident or comfortable enough to say. And um, I I have a way of doing that without compromising the integrity of maybe who told me. I hold
Right.
that's very important. But I think it's important for business leaders um, to hear the hard things and then also the great things, because I'm working with several companies that have been in business for more than 50 years, and they haven't been in business for 50 years and having growing profits, not just revenue, but growing profits year after year without doing a lot right. But it's easy to get task focused and not be relationship focused
Mhm.
many times. And so this takes it back to being relationship focused, and making sure that the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted when it comes to the people. Because with every company, the people are the greatest asset.
That is, I love that line. People are the greatest asset. I use this in conversations, especially when we're talking about self-awareness work, Denise, like the why or any other assessment that you use. Um, you know, just because you don't know you have cancer doesn't mean you don't have cancer.
Correct.
So a lot of people will avoid going to the doctor, going to the dentist, going through this self-awareness journey, this deep learning that we do when you work with a coach or a consultant like Denise, who's going to show you not just the pretty or wonderful things that are going on, but also let you know that, hey, there are some people within your company that don't really like when this happens, that have better ideas than you have in terms of how things should be run. And so you bring that out. What's a typical reaction when you or how do you prepare? I guess that's be a better question. How do you prepare executives for that feedback that's coming, that whether it's positive or negative? What kind of things do you say to them so that when it does come, they can handle it and actually be productive with it?
Well, let me say this. When I have my very first meeting with the
Right.
business leaders, I tell them that the collaborative process is very important, and that coming back with honest feedback is important for them, and that I will never mislead, I will never sugarcoat anything, that I definitely want to mine the gold in the companies and be able to search for that and lift it
Right.
up. But if I come across areas that may be blind spots, that um I manage the expectations right up front that I'm going to bring those things, because I feel like it's important for them to be made aware of whatever it is that I might learn during the process. And research shows that 94% of people it is important to 94% of people that companies where they work have healthy cultures. And besides, when people leave organizations, it's often because of the relationship with their direct report. Right. And one of the next reasons is if there is a toxic culture. And they will leave for less money even if they're in a toxic culture. Yeah. So it's so important that companies that they focus on the culture of their company while they're focusing on, production or manufacturing or revenues or cutting expenses, but they think about how do our employees feel about coming to work every day, because that has an impact, a direct impact on productivity. And business leaders are busy. They oftentimes don't want to deal with all of these types of issues. They have to keep their eye on the ball of what's ahead of them to keep their companies profitable. And that's where I come in to help them. Or even if they don't want to hire me, that's okay. But I can give them ideas that they can even take internally and have their own staff do. It's a little harder sometimes because having an outside person, we can see things differently from the outside looking in. But I've met with a couple of companies and they were like, well, if we're not ready to hire you just yet, but we do know this is important, what are some things we can do? And I'll just sit down and we'll have a conversation, and I'll give them a little path of what to do.
Right. I saw you reminded me a Richard Branson quote that said, train them well enough so they can leave. Yeah. But treat them well enough so they don't want to.
That's right.
That's such that is such a culture driven type of statement. So, one of the things I'm hearing, and I love hearing your perspective on this, Denise, as a better way person who likes to challenge the status quo, how is working with Denise different than working with someone else? As I said, you're the first person I know that I could say, hey, Denise, I'm going to hire a new COO and I need your help because I want them to fit my culture. I want this to be the right fit. And we know how expensive it is to hire the wrong person, right? And having them go through training and then having them not work out is one of the worst mistakes you can make as a leader, right? Bringing in the wrong person, because now you're losing 6 months up to a year, plus their salary, plus the training. So that's already different. It's not something I've heard before, hiring for culture. How are you better? How are you different? And how are you more dependable than someone else who does what you do? So take us through the YOS of Denise Harmon Consulting.
Well, I'll say this, Dan, I think one thing, and I don't know if this makes me different, but it's definitely how I am. I'm fun to work with. I enjoy what I do. I think I bring life to the process. But when it comes to hiring, one of the things that I have heard repetitively from hiring managers is they get so frustrated. They'll hire a recruiter or a recruiting company. They'll bring them in and they start getting resumes or interviews with people. And they're like, why did they send me these people? And it's a numbers game. It becomes a numbers game. And we know that 2/3 of applicants misrepresent themselves on their resumes. That's a proven statistic. And so I would say that, whenever we go to hire through Harmon Recruiting and Consulting, and we do these interviews, and with the current employees, and we talk to people there, we don't just say, okay, give me the job description, we'll post it, we'll go through resumes, we'll look for people. What we do, that's why talking to the people who already work there, talking to people that this position will be engaging with, what's important, to all the people, all the touch points of where this new hire will engage and interact, talk to those people, because then it's like we're taking the blindfold off when we throw the dart to look for that candidate. And we get much closer to the center of the dartboard when we begin hiring and finding the right person, not just any person. And that is so important, because I think oftentimes in the quote cycle of recruiting, it's very easy just to say, give me a job description and we'll look for a person. And I feel like that's looking for someone with blindfolds on. And you may hit the dartboard, but you're not going to hit close to the center. We want to hit close to the center. We want to hire right. And we want it to be a good culture fit, because you can bring one person in, and if they don't fit the culture and they're a bad culture fit, it messes up the chemistry of the entire team. And if I can just, I don't want to over talk, but I had someone tell me this story, it's actually been years ago. And it's like, if you have this beautiful pan of brownies and it smells good and it looks good and it's warm out of the oven, and you just want to take a big plate and put a big scoop of brownie on it, right? And that's a healthy, thriving, great cultured organization.
Right.
But then if that same, you're about to take your first bite and someone says, oh, I flicked a little poop in there, but it's just a little bit. All of a sudden, it's just a speck, but all of a sudden, it's not that great of a batch of brownies anymore. Even if it smells good on the outside, you don't want it. And because it messes up the whole batch. And that is why I think hiring for culture in healthy cultures, or creating healthy cultures to hire from within, is so, so important. So that's what makes me different. I'm fun, and I take the time to really talk to the people inside the organization so we can craft a great employment value proposition. We can identify if there's some weak spots.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you improve, is by identifying things that aren't the best. You make those better, and then look for great candidates that have a great skill set and a great culture fit. It takes both.
It sure does. Thank you. Thank you for that answer. I'm going to take you back, Denise, because with the why of better way, a how of challenge, and a what of trust, when did you first see that? And how does it impact today? If let's go back to 7-year-old or 8-year-old or 10-year-old Denise, when's the first time that you remember saying there's got to be a better way to do this, and implementing it and imposing your why on the process where, and I know that as kids, we don't have as much power, but believe you me, I have a 13-year-old, and I know that they can exert a lot of influence on our decisions. How about you? When do you remember saying for the first time, or where does the why of better way come in for you?
Well, I think, I'm sure if I went back and thought about it, even in childhood, I could come up with example after example. But the thing that comes to me first is probably when I was in high school. I knew I wanted to go to college. Things were different then, but I knew that I had to study and make the grades so I could get into the schools or get accepted to the schools I applied to. And so I instantly said, I have to find a better way of studying, because it didn't always come natural to me. So I would figure out better ways to study so I could retain the information and make good grades. But I would constantly in life challenge the status quo. I've always been a challenge girl. I have a great friend of mine, and we worked together for many years. She would constantly tell me I'm a barrier breaker, because and today I'm the same today. I won't settle for just the way it's always been done. I want to find fresh, creative, innovative ways of hiring, of finding people, of tackling challenges or places where company leaders are stuck, to help them push through those barriers. And I've been that way my entire life. I feel like even from high school. And I'm sure I was a challenge at times for my parents, but trust has always been a big deal to me. Having trusted solutions and being a trusted colleague. When I tell people that I'm going to do something, I do it. Right. My follow through is really strong, because I feel like when I follow through, that establishes and it builds trust. And and the ability to be discreet is a part of that trust combination. And because people when you're working with companies and you're hiring for them and you're working with team members, you have to to assure them in a way that they know what they tell you, that you're going to hold that and be discreet with it.
Sure.
So I feel like, I don't know if that completely answered your question, but
No, that's really good. How old were you when you started looking for better ways? That was I wanted to get to, like, when do you think your
uh,
YOS really got hardwired for you? And is there an experience
mm,
that you remember? And I guess high school, finding better ways to study, so you could retain information, right?
yeah, yeah,
So 17, 16.
probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, probably 14 because I was a freshman in high school when I was 14. And I knew before I even went into high school, I couldn't wait. I had to start right then.
Yeah.
So,
What would be this is really good, and tell me, Denise, if I knew you in high school, so if
mhm.
I'm one of your freshman, sophomore classmates, and we haven't seen each other since high school, and I saw you today, what would I notice different about Denise than the Denise that I knew back then?
Well, my hair is chemically dependent. So there's that. I think just more settled and confident in my skin. Uh, there's a lot of years between high school and now. And so there's a lot of growth that's happened. I think wisdom
Mhm.
now that I probably, just because of my age, I didn't have. And I think my compassion level is definitely metered up.
Mhm.
Life, you see so many things during life, and I love people, and I've always loved people. I love meeting new people. I love learning about what's important to people, and I've always been that way, but I don't know if I demonstrated that as well.
Mm.
The younger me,
Mhm.
probably. I would say I didn't. I didn't. And also, when I was younger, I was constantly go, 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 go. And even would try to find better ways to study so I could retain the information so I could free up to go. And
Right.
now, while I mean, my business is very important to me. I love what I do. I love sewing into the lives of leaders, to help them um, build culture driven teams.
Right.
But I know the importance of stepping back and having some downtime and some quiet to really take it all in and think about what I've learned and heard within those companies, and not just go, go, go. That's probably that's one thing that's definitely that's been a discipline that I think is important.
That's really good. Really appreciate, because I think when we often forget, uh, and I love that you talked about your compassion. I think, and I
Mm,
see that, and I saw that 3 years ago, so it's not been that long. But we tend to do things when we're young, right?
yeah.
When we're kids. That boy, I'm so glad that, and I always tell people, because sometimes I'll meet people and that I haven't seen, especially since
Mhm.
I'm living back in my hometown, that I haven't seen in 20, 30 years, and they might apologize for something, and I say, "You know what? I judge no one on anything they did between the age of 13 and 25. We're just completely our brains aren't fully developed, and
That's
so,
right.
if you did something mean to me, I'm sure you had your reasons for doing it at the time, but that's not who you are, and I'm sure that's not definitely who you are today. So, but we all evolve. One of the things I mentioned at the beginning of the program, is I've seen this change in you, in your confidence, the way you carry yourself. Even these great pictures that we've got up here of you, that you submitted. You look so great. You look so confident. What's been a big change that has led to that confident stance, that confident person that you are today versus even 3 years ago? Not that you weren't then, but I've seen it, an evolution of that greater confidence.
Well, I have to say, Dan, probably a couple of things. I think the things in life we go through that are real challenging, and frankly, if I can say, are just real hard, they strengthen us and they grow us. We grow the most during the most challenging times. And I went through a very difficult time in 22 and part of 23 after my father passed away. And that really, just what I went through during that, there was some complicated stuff around it, but coming out on the other side of all that I had to endure going through some complicated stuff has made me just a stronger person. And I think that the strength that I've gained internally, along with the 25 plus years of experience that I've had under my belt in working in business and working with high level business executives and leadership teams at all levels over the years has just given me a really solid foundation. And I'll tell you, it was so interesting to me. I had a conversation with a mutual friend, Brenda Harkins, and she told me about the YOS. And she said, I want you to take this quick. She wanted me to do the YOS so she could tell me what my YOS was, my why, my
Right.
what, and my how. And I said, okay, I'll do that. And she was getting her certification. And so when I sat down with her and we went over that, and she told me, my why is looking for better ways. And I do that by challenging the status quo, thinking outside the box, and bringing trusted solutions and building trusting relationships. When I heard her say that, I said, I have been to so many seminars. I have been to so many, like, let's find your purpose, your life purpose and your life mission. I've spent long weekends going through all of that and leadership, or, different leadership seminars. And in that one 45-minute lunch, when she went through that with me, I said, this nailed it. This is exactly how I'm wired, and it's how I serve people. And so
Yes.
that really was a defining moment for me. I really appreciate her taking the time to do that. And then I wanted to become a certified YOS coach.
And so now you are a certified YOS coach. What's that been like? You get to be Brenda for other people. Do you use that with the executives you work with when you're looking at culture? And then do you use that with the interviewees or with the candidates? Tell me a little bit more about that part of it, if you are using it.
I do with the leaders, and
Right.
I do with some of the people that I am hiring for. It depends on the position and the situation, but I'm a big believer in it.
Yeah.
I
It's
sure am.
it sounds like it made an impact for you as it did for me. I always tell my
Mhm.
story when I discovered my why, how important that was. And and as you said, we go to these seminars, when we go to these talks, and we hear about finding your purpose. But you come out of there thinking, I don't know that I found my purpose. And this isn't your purpose, right? Your purpose isn't to find better ways. It's how you're wired, though.
Right. It
And it
is how I'm
allows
wired.
you to live into your purpose. Would you say that?
Absolutely. 100%. And it helps me have confidence, right?
Right.
To know that I have the skill set and how I can serve my clients by utilizing it. I mean, this is what they're getting when they hire me, someone to help them find better ways to push through barriers and to raise the bar and to identify where there are things that may not be going exactly as they think they are,
Right.
but we identify them and we find better ways. And let's not take a cookie cutter approach. That's another really fun thing, is that every client, I feel like it's a new day, it's customized, there are processes, there are things that are the same, but the
Sure.
relationships are all fresh and new, and the situations are different. And that's a lot of fun.
I love that. I love that you bring up the fact that that is just who you are, right? And I hear this a lot from clients that I work with, when they discover their YOS. They say, that's who I've always been, but now I have the words to express it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so you're doing that for people now. Denise, let's talk about, we're almost at the end of our time together, but I want to talk about a time that you said, why not? This is why not leadership. Tell us about a time in your life that you said why not to an opportunity, to a new job, a new relationship. You said why not, and you're so glad that you did.
Yeah. So The very first thing that comes to mind when you ask me that is, I had been at an organization in a very high leadership, a director position for 13 years,
Yeah.
and I loved it. I was great at it, and I don't mean that boastful. I say that humbly, but I really loved what I was doing, and I knew it was time for a change.
Mhm.
And I thought about all the reasons I might not should. I was scared. Oh my gosh, what about, the security? What
Right.
about, all the things of like, oh, and then I just stepped back and said, I really feel like this is the time I'm supposed to step away. I'm supposed to step out. And I looked at myself and I said, I could stay for the wrong reasons, or I could leave for all the right reasons. And why not? And I did, and I I left, and I still love that organization. It's a great organization, but it was just time, and you can't step into the new until you walk out of the old. I believe
Right.
that completely. And when it was time for the crossroads of what am I going to decide here, I said, you know what? Why not? I'm going for it. And I'm so glad I did. And interestingly enough, it was in January of 2020,
Right.
and 6 weeks later, the whole world seemed to fall apart and
Right.
COVID hit. And so I was like, well, maybe I won't start consulting yet, because I mean, that's not the best time to start, right?
Right.
Consulting, and people weren't hiring, and I didn't, but I'd always wanted to do something in real estate. And so I told my husband, I said, I want to buy a house and flip it. And he said, are you crazy? I said, no, we're crazy. And he said, no, we aren't crazy. And I said,
You are.
you are. I said, well, I really want to do that. I mean, I'm not going to just sit home all day. I can't do that.
Right.
And so we did. We bought a house about 5 minutes from where we live. And I looked at him one day and I said, why not? Why not? And we did it, and it was a huge success. And I won't do that again, probably, but learn to hang sheetrock and do some things like that. But
Right.
it was a great experience, and I don't regret it. It was one of those challenging times that made me stronger.
Yes.
Yeah,
You mentioned that earlier, and there's so much, and it's always hardest when you're going through those challenging times. It just seems like it's not going to end. And dealing, and a lot of us, in our age group, and I don't know how close we are in age, but we're dealing with having kids and having aging parents who are going through difficult situations. But and the hardest thing to remember is that you're going to come out on the other side of it, and everything tough that's ever happened to you
that's right.
made you the person that you are today. And I see that in you, Denise. I definitely like I said, saw that sparkle in your eye. I can tell you're doing the work that you love to do, and that you're making a difference in the lives of your clients. And I want to thank you for being here with us today, and for sharing your story with our Lead Different podcast audience and our Why Not champions across around the world, so they could hear your story. um I'd like to, with that being said, I'd love to end the show on that note.
Why not?
Thank you so much, Denise, for being here, for sharing your story, for just being a part of our circle. We just love staying in touch with our coach friends, with our clients, and sharing your stories with our audience. Those of you that are listening, please don't forget to hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Share this podcast with people that you know, and let people know about the podcast, because the more people we can reach, the more people that we can get to lead different and to work with people like Denise to make an impact on the company culture and hire the right people based on their culture, the bigger impact you can help us all make. So, Denise, thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you for sharing your story, and thank you for being a Why Not champion.
Thank you so much, Dan. It's really a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
It's been a
And
pleasure to have you.
and I'll say, if anyone that is listening wants to have the hiring blueprint that I wrote, they can go to my website at harmonconsultants.net and have it for free. And yeah, I'd love to give that away.
Perfect. HarmonConsultants.net. We'll make sure and put that in the show notes. We'll also put Denise's website on there. If you have anything that you want to talk to Denise about, I know she's on LinkedIn. I know she's available at, is it HarmonConsultants.net?
Yes.
at harmonconsultants.net. Please contact her. Thank you so much for being on the show, Denise, and we'll see you guys next week on the Lead Different podcast.
Thank you, Dan. Keep up the great work.
Thank you.
This is Lead Different.
Subscribe now. Discover a new era of leadership. Lead different because great leaders change the world.